I'm going to be going through your first use with the design table. And before I jump into this part we're going to make, I'm going to show you the end product. So we're going to make a bar linkage like this. If I rotate around, you can see it has a number of holes in it, equally spaced. Control 7. And right now we're only really used to working in the design tree, which is this left panel here. But you'll notice here there are a bunch of different panels we can work with. So you'll get to see here, we're going to start working with the configuration manager as well. And here is where I have my design table, where I can actually specify different configurations of the same part. So as an example here, I have 4 different configurations. This is my default, which has 9 holes. I can have, if I double click, I also have one with 3 holes. 5 holes, and 7 holes as well. So what we can do here with design tables is we can make multiple configurations of the same part. In this case, we're doing something very simple, and we're changing the number of holes that exist in this linkage. So let's jump into how I made this. So if we start from scratch, we are going to start a new part, or Control N. New part, click OK, or click Enter. And here we are. So this should look familiar. I'm going to start sketching on my front plane this time. So I'm going to click Front, Edit Sketch, or New Sketch really. And then I'm going to use a straight slot in this case. Again, there are a number of ways to make this part, but for simplicity, we're just going to make a slot. I click once, click twice, and then the last click will define basically how thick it is. So I'm just going to click and drag. Doesn't really matter. I'm going to add dimensions here in a second anyways. Another hotkey I really like is if you hold down the right key on your clicker, on your mouse, and move your mouse upward, you'll see you get Smart Dimension tool right there. I can get out of this using the same technique. So I hold down the right click, and I move my mouse up. I get rid of Smart Dimension. You'll see here when I hold on the right mouse and I move my mouse around, I actually get a couple options, some quick little tools here. So that's one I use a lot. So hold down the right key, move your mouse up, and you have your Smart Dimension tool. So the default shape here, I'm going to make it 4 inches long. So I click the length and say 4. And then I am going to define the radius here. And let's say I want this to be 1/4 of an inch. I can put divided by multiplication plus or minus signs in the dimension box, and it will do the math for me. So if you're lazy, you just want to write 1/4, you can do that as well. And then I have my base model. I'm content with this. I'm going to now extrude it. In this case, I'll just do a blind extrusion, 0.1 inches. That's fine. Now, if I want to work on this plane, I'm going to add a hole into here, into the surface. So I'm going to click the plane, go into Sketch, have a new sketch here, Control 8 to make me perpendicular to the plane, so it's easier to draw here. And I'm going to click the Circle tool, click the origin, because I want it to be in the middle. If for some reason I didn't make this circle, the start of the circle on this origin, if I go to the edge here, you see this little orange dotted line shows up. There's also a little black circle in the middle here, so it'll let me select this middle. So I'm just going to click and drag the circle. Again, right click, move my mouse upward for smart dimensioning. And I'm going to click the sphere, the circle rather, and then type in, let's say I want it to be 0.125 or 1/8 of an inch in diameter. There's two ways I can pattern this hole. I want to pattern this hole. I want 9 different holes along the length of this linkage, equally spaced. One of the ways I can do it is within my sketch. If I stay in the sketch, I can do linear sketch pattern. and I can specify a direction I want to move this hole in. So if I click this area here, I am going to click a line that is parallel to the direction I want to move the hole. I want to pattern the hole. So I click this edge, and then this is asking me if I want to go another direction, if I want to do X and Y. But in this case, we just want to go one direction, so let's not worry about this. And then the entity I want to pattern is the circle. I'm going to click that. I want 9 holes in the span of 4 inches, so each hole will be 0.5 inches away from each other. And right now it's going the wrong direction, so I'm going to flip this with this reverse direction tool, and then I can just increase the amount to 9. Click OK. And now I have my 9 holes. But you'll see here, all these are blue, this one's black. So what does that mean? That means I need to add a dimension here, something to define these holes. I also can tell these are underdefined because if I click one of the middles here, you can see it's underdefined in this direction. So really all I need to do is add one dimension. I'm going to click the center of each of these holes and say 0.5 inches. And now we have full definition and we're in good shape. Finally, I can do extruded cut while I'm in the sketch or outside of the sketch, really doesn't matter. And I'm going to go through all. Click OK. So that's one way to draw this pattern. So the second way to pattern this hole is outside of the sketch. So I'm going to cut the hole first, cut one of the holes. I have my singular hole, and now I can pattern the feature as opposed to patterning the sketch. In this case, it's a fairly simple feature we're patterning, so you can do it either way. It really just depends on your preference and what you're trying to pattern. But in this case, there are 2 ways to do it. So showing you the other way to do it is very similar. Once again, select a direction that's parallel to the direction I want to move. So I'm going to click this edge and then click the feature. Make sure you click inside of the hole. If I were to click, for example, just outside of the hole, it's going to think I want to pattern, linear pattern the entire boss that I've made, which would be incorrect. So if you're ever having issues selecting the actual feature you want to pattern, you can always drop down this little arrow, expand these trees, and you want to pattern this cut. So once this box is selected, click the cut, and now there should be no ambiguities. So once again, you're going to say 0.5 inches between each hole. You want to pattern it 9 times, and you can click OK. So that's option 2. So now we have our base part, and we want to create different configurations. So how do we do that? What we can do is we can use a design table. So if we go to Insert, Tables, Design Table, we have this little window that pops up. You can leave the default settings here. You can say Auto Create. And what it's going to do, if I click OK, it is going to populate an Excel sheet with all the dimensions I've already used, which you see pop up right here. So I'm going to just select all these, say OK, and then it's going to populate this Excel sheet, which it opens within the SOLIDWORKS window. If I scroll over here, you'll see on the horizontal axis, these are the dimensions I have used thus far. And then on the vertical axis, these are going to be my different configurations. So default, again, that's the one I started with. Let's say I want to make 3 other configurations, one with 3 holes, one with 5 holes, and one with 7 holes. Now, there's a lot of numbers here. Let's say maybe I forgot what each of these are referring to. It's not a problem. I can just X out of here, Just literally click outside the window, and now it basically tells me, by the way, I created 3 new configurations. These are the names that I specified. I'm gonna say, great, okay. You'll see all the stoplights are here. That's not a problem. So you just click Control B. It'll update. It'll rebuild all of the sketches. So now our sketches, you'll notice the color changes as well. So now that they're pink, it basically means they're being referenced in a design table, which is good. That means that we're referencing these in an Excel sheet. And right now, I want to grab the dimensions that are important to me that are going to change from configuration to configuration. So I'm going to go in here. This one I want to change because if I want if I want less holes, I want the length to also decrease with it. So by just clicking Sketch 1, I'm hovering over this. Okay, so I know this is called D1 at Sketch 1. So I'm going to want to change that, that value. Additionally, I want to see my pattern. This guy right here. So this is the number of instances, 9. So there's going to be a 9 in my Excel sheet that I need to change. That's going to dictate the number of holes. And then the D1 at Sketch 1 is the length I need to change. To get back into my design table, I'm going to click Configuration Manager on the left-hand panel, expand the tables, right-click Design Table, Edit Table. Okay. So it populated it for me because I didn't put anything in these boxes and they can't be blank, but that's not a problem. I can just change these values now. So D1 at Sketch 1, like we just mentioned, this is the length. So if I have 3 holes and I know the spacing between each hole is ½ inch, then I'm going to make this 1 inch. 5 holes similarly will be 2 inches and then 3 inches. This value won't change. This is the radius of my linkage of the end piece. This is the thickness of my part. Again, you can see this because it says D1 at Boss Extrude 1. So this is the thickness call out. Again, I don't need to change this value. Aha, here we go. So this is the pattern, 9. So this dictates basically how many holes I'm going to have. So I want 3 holes for this one, 5 holes for this one, and 7 holes. So that should be everything I need to change. I didn't need to put IN here as a suffix, but it's just a force of habit. I could also just put, as an example, just 2. Again, because I'm using IPS as my unit system, it knows that 2 means 2 inches. And now if I just left click outside of the Excel sheet, it will update for me. So now, Control 7, if I double click one of these options, it updates for me on the fly, which is super cool. So you can see pretty easily, that's just an example with holes, but if you have a lot more complex parts that you need to start creating different configurations for, maybe you have a screw that needs various different types of lengths, but you don't want to have 20 different part files, you can have one part file that has all of these configurations within it, and all the data stored right there, which is super, super convenient.